here's what's already happening, though. Today in New York, you have, there's news that NYU Langone, which is a great hospital, unfortunately, they've been doing these procedures, or at least the hormones, because there's a report, I think it was in the New York Times yesterday, that they, in the wake of this executive order, because they are an institution that does receive some federal funds, denied or canceled 2 scheduled injections of puberty blockers. It's, I guess you get like a thing in your arm, almost like a birth control pill as a woman. And they were about to do these on 2 12-year-olds, which is not a surprise because that's when you start puberty. It's disgusting. Like a 12-year-old could ever possibly consent to what these drugs do to him or her. In any event, NYU Langone canceled 2 of the procedures. And then there was a protest outside of the hospital last night by these far-left loons led by Cynthia Nixon, who is as far left as that. Yeah, it was the group, the Democratic Socialists of America, the ones who were cheering all the dead Jews after 10/7, right, in the middle of Manhattan. Like, yay, dead, right, burned babies. Yeah, we're in favor. That's the Democratic Socialists of America. So she parades out there with them. And I'll show you her soundbite. But more important than Cynthia Nixon is Letitia James, the Attorney General of the state of New York, who responded to NYU Langone saying, you better do these procedures. Because if you offer puberty blockers for so-called cis kids, which is a disgusting term too, just kids, to any kids, you can't deny them to, quote, trans kids, or you have violated our anti-discrimination laws, Mike. So that's now Letitia James is putting NYU Langone and all of our other hospitals who are trying to comply with the Trump EO in a very difficult position.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what these Democrats are trying to accomplish here.
Democratic Socialists, Mike. Democratic Socialists.
There you go. There you go. I mean, think about this. They want to create an industry where children have their healthy genitals cut off and they're giving life-destroying pills and surgeries at a very young age, 12 years old, 13 years old, and then they want to have patients for the rest of their lives where you're spending several $100,000 trying to maintain this gender-affirming care, these pills and surgeries that destroy the lives of kids. Look, gender dysphoria is a very sad, tragic mental illness, but we're not seeing an explosion of gender dysphoria in this country. This is a social contagion where these kids think it's cool to be trans, and then their psychotic parents are actually going forward and allowing them to have these life-destroying pills and surgeries. I'm with you, Megyn. This should be outlawed across the country and it should be criminalized. And if you're a doctor or a parent and you're doing this to a kid, you should go to prison.
Yes, 100%. These doctors are the problem. What these doctors are making money hand over fist, performing these bizarre surgeries. And if you want to do that as an adult, there's that weird clinic down in Texas where you can get all of your genitals removed. You can get your belly button removed. You can turn yourself into some sort of cyborg if you want. I don't support it. I don't like it. I think you're weird and gross, but it's really not my business. But when it's children, it's a totally different matter. But Dave, I think you put your finger on it, because what Tish James is saying is, if you comply with the Trump executive order, hospitals, you are behaving you're discriminating between sort of regular kids and these kids who say that they're trans. And that's exactly what they argued before the Supreme Court in the case that you referenced, challenging the Tennessee ban on these surgeries for minors. They tried to argue that the proponents of these procedures, the people who don't want it banned, they tried to say it's sex discrimination to go in there and say that you can get a puberty blocker if you're an actual girl, but you can't get one if you're a, quote, trans girl, meaning like fake girl, meaning boy, that it's somehow sex discrimination. And the Supreme Court did not seem at all inclined to buy that. And so Tish James's objection really could be dismissed summarily, depending on how the Supreme Court rules within a matter of months.
It's interesting, Megyn, because they did make an equal protection argument under the 14th Amendment. And I think it is a legitimate legal argument to make that if the hormone drugs are available to juveniles who are not trying to transition or don't have gender dysphoria, but they are not available to juveniles who do have gender dysphoria, then that is an interesting equal protection argument to make. And I guess then it's a question of, do we as judges put ourselves in the position of being medical experts, or do we put ourselves in the position of being judges where we defer to the legislators? And right now, the judges are saying the latter. We are not going to try to know what's best and put ourselves in the shoes of doctors. We're just going to defer to the legislature because we don't want any part of this. And I think that's where it's going to fall.
I agree, but I think this same type of argument was scoffed at in open court when they tried to make it. And Mike, it's like, you can't, take Ozempic. Any adult, maybe Lizzo wants to use Ozempic. I don't think most people will give her a hard time on that. But if you want to give Ozempic to a 6-month-old baby, that's abuse. You'll be in prison. You will be behind bars very quickly. Like, we have different formulations based on who wants the medicine and for what purpose. And this is, for some, it could be, in essence, a vanity project to have these puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones injected into their child. For some, it could be a form of conversion therapy, because in too many cases, they don't want a gay boy. They don't want an effeminate gay son. And they're bigots. They tend to be leftist bigots who would rather have a girl. You're not a gay boy, you're a girl. And they push their kids down this road. And their son would have grown up to be a totally fine, gay man, but they manipulate him into doing, so it's sick. It is like giving the Ozempic to a 6-month-old. So I think Tish James will lose her challenge. And that leaves me, though, with Cynthia Nixon, who we all agree, Democratic Socialists of America, is a disgusting, vile group. And they think they have the moral high ground here, Mike. She went out. She was, of course, one of the stars of Sex and the City. She had the following to say.
Most importantly, I am here today as the mother of a proud trans man.
That means a woman, a daughter.
I am here today as the aunt of a proud trans man.
That means her niece.
My kid is trans, and my kid's best friend is trans. My trans kid had his top surgery at NYU a number of years ago.
His top surgery, her breast removed at NYU, she said.
His doctors were fantastic. His surgeon was the best we could have imagined. And the idea that this city is filled with young people who thought they had a place to go where they could receive the highest care, and that place has now been shut to them, sickens me to my core.
I'll tell you one thing. She's right about one thing. She is sick. She is sick. And to your point, Mike, about social contagion, did she not just make your point?
Yeah, it is truly sickening. Again, gender dysphoria is a severe mental illness. We should protect them. We should treat them with compassion. We shouldn't celebrate this and turn it into a social contagion where kids think it's cool to go be trans and then have their psychotic parents, like that woman, move forward with transgender surgeries, these life-destroying pills and surgeries that change them forever. I mean, these kids can't even get Tylenol at their schools, but their parents think they can get transgender surgeries. I mean, what would happen if a mother said, we're going to cut off the arms and legs of my healthy child? People would say, you can't do that. That is butchering your child. You can't do that. So how the hell do we let these crazy parents cut off the genitals of their healthy children?
Yeah, exactly right. What do you make of it, Dave? Because it's barbaric. And for her, you know as well as I do, 30 years ago, it's not that there were all these trans people in hiding. She's like, it's her daughter. When you say trans, if you substitute in the word fake, it actually gets you to the right result. It's very confusing for people. So she has a daughter who had her breast chopped off at NYU. And like so many other people, she wants to feel validated in her choice and her kid's choice by having other kids do the same thing. And so she's going to go out there with the Democratic. It's no accident that she could only find those loons to go march with her, Dave, in trying to make her point.
Megyn, she ran for governor against Andrew Cuomo in a Democratic primary, and she got 35% of the vote. That was a left-wing challenge. That was probably 34% more than she deserved to get. She's spoken out against Israel and seems to care more about Hamas than the dead Israeli children that are the victims of terrorism. But as far as on this issue, look, I'm glad that Mike said what he said too, because gender dysphoria is a real thing, and I think that it's important to treat these children with compassion. I do agree that it's different when you're a child as when you're an adult, but at the same time, about like 1%, about 1.5% of our country is identified as trans, and I do think that a lot of the conversation we have is inflating that number to make it seem like they're in every corner alley, they're coming to get you. And I think that it's important to realize we're talking about a very, very small group of people. I worry about discrimination against them. At the same time, I hear you. I think when you're a juvenile and you can't make the decisions for yourself under the law, that perhaps we shouldn't be allowed, children should be allowed to have that surgery. Now, the hormone blockers are a little different. I get it that parents should generally have the say in their child's health, and lawmakers may want to curtail that when it comes to this area. But that one's a little more confusing to me. I just think it's clear, though, on the surgery, that should be when you're an adult.
And just FYI, because a lot of people don't know this, but if your child goes from puberty blockers right into cross-sex hormones, he's sterilized or she is sterilized, and absolutely no hope of sexual function. So you have basically chemically castrated your child, and they will never achieve sexual pleasure, ever. I mean, how can you argue that an 11-year-old could ever consent to that? They have no idea what that means, what that portends for their life. And it's like people sue over this, the lack of consortium from a spouse, because they're no longer able to perform because they got so depressed after the car accident. You're guaranteeing lack of consortium for your child for the rest of his or her life, just by the hormones. Forget the surgeries.
You know, Megyn, it's interesting you bring up 11-year-olds. As a prosecutor, we do differentiate under the law an 11-year-old from a 17-year-old. We're not even allowed to direct file an 11-year-old into adult court. In Florida, you can direct file, obviously, a 16, 17-year-old. And so perhaps that's where it should be, where there could be different rules in place for an 11-year-old compared to a 17-year-old. But I get it. I understand as a parent why you are concerned. I just think since the gender dysphoria is real, and I'm not a doctor, that I just wish we could come to some sort of common ground on this rather than where we are right now.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point, as the largest generation is, of course, hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing right now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to the number 989898 and get your free info kit on gold and a copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings and diversify them. Text my initials, MK, to the number 989898 to learn more today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.